Okay, so we're going to dive into a pretty big topic today. It's all about a fundamental shift in how we think about the human mind. A journey from seeing something as broken to understanding the incredible, complex, and different ways there are to be human.
In this quote, this right here is the heart of the whole thing. It's a feeling so many people have after getting a diagnosis, right? This sense that you're a puzzle that's missing a piece, that you just don't work the way you're supposed to. And that feeling, it forces us to ask a really important question.
To even begin to answer that, we've got to go back. I mean, way back, before any of our modern labels even existed, to see how people tried to make sense of minds that just, well, they just work differently.
You know, long before we had any kind of scientific diagnosis, people used the tools they had to explain what seemed unexplainable. And those tools were things like folklore, myths, and stories.
I mean, just think about that for a second. The difference they were seeing was so profound that the only explanation they could come up with was literally supernatural. It was a story born from this deep human need to understand why a child might seem to exist in a world all their own. So here we start to see the very first scientific attempts to kind of map this territory. You've got Bleuler coining autism, though he saw it as part of schizophrenia. Then there's the absolutely incredible work of Grunya Sukareva, who is describing autistic traits way back in 1925. But her work was basically unknown in the West for decades. And finally, Leo Kanner, who really brought the idea into the medical mainstream. The myths were fading, and clinical observations were taking their place.
And all of those clinical observations, well, they gave rise to this really powerful framework that would pretty much dominate the entire conversation for the next half a century. It's called the medical model.
This model basically shifted the whole focus to pathology. The main questions became, what is wrong with this person, and how do we fix them? The baseline for everything was normal, and anything that wasn't that was seen as a deviation, as a defect.
And the language from that early research, wow, it is so revealing. Just listen to the words: defect, inadequacy, diminution, rigidity. It's the language you'd use to describe a machine that isn't working right. It's literally describing a human being in terms of their errors and flaws, not just their way of being.
This is where that famous puzzle piece symbol comes from. And it really captures the whole spirit of the medical model, doesn't it? The puzzle piece wasn't meant to be a symbol of uniqueness. It was a symbol of an enigma, a problem that doctors and society had to figure out and, put together correctly.
But then, as we got closer to the end of the 20th century, a completely revolutionary idea started to take hold. And it didn't come from doctors looking from the outside in. No, it came from neurodivergent people themselves, speaking from the inside out.
This idea just flips the whole conversation on its head. The concept is actually pretty simple, but it is so profound. Just like we have biodiversity out in nature, we have neurodiversity in the human race. So an autistic brain isn't a broken version of a typical brain, it's just a different and equally valid type of human brain.
And when you change your thinking that drastically, you have to change your language too. So a disorder becomes a neurotype. Symptoms become traits or characteristics. And for a lot of people, saying person with autism, which kind of implies the autism is some separate bad thing, that becomes autistic person, which is a statement that it's a core part of who they are, not something to be gotten rid of.
And look, this wasn't just some academic theory. This was a full-blown civil rights movement. Pioneers like Jim Sinclair were building communities that were all about acceptance, not about finding a cure. And that activism really set the stage for the very real, very personal debates that are still happening today.
Because, let's be honest, we don't live in a world where one model just neatly replaced the other. Instead, these two big ideas, disorder on one hand and difference on the other, they exist in this constant, lived tension.
For so many people, the daily struggle is absolutely undeniable. I mean, when you can't hold down a job, or your relationships are suffering, or you can't manage basic daily tasks, the whole idea of neurodiversity as just a difference can feel a little distant. The disorder part feels incredibly real, and the need for medical help can feel like a lifeline.
And this right here, this highlights just how complex things are, even within the community itself. There's this very real fear that if you focus too much on treatment or a cure, you're basically rejecting a person's identity. You're trying to erase a way of being from the world. It is an incredibly delicate and deeply personal debate.
So this brings us to a really crucial idea. Maybe it's not an either-or thing. Maybe a person can have a brain that is legitimately, fundamentally different, a perfectly valid neurotype, and also be disabled by living in a society that just wasn't built for that neurotype.
Okay, so if we accept that, if we accept that both can be true, then the question completely changes. It stops being just how do we fix the person, and it starts becoming how do we fix the environment.
And this is what that actually looks like in the real world. Tools just like this one, created by people who live it, shift the focus entirely. They give you a concrete roadmap for changing the world around a person to meet their needs, instead of demanding that the person change to meet the world's needs.
And when you look at the kinds of changes, they can be surprisingly straightforward. For sensory stuff, noise-canceling headphones. For communication, give people the meeting agenda ahead of time. For getting work done, provide instructions in writing. See, none of this is about trying to rewrite someone's brain. It's just about removing the barriers so that brain can do its absolute best work.
It's a conscious choice to build flexibility right into our systems. And this brings us all the way back to that first quote, that painful feeling of being broken. The whole idea here is that the feeling doesn't come from some flaw inside a person, but from the friction of a different kind of mind grinding against a world that wasn't built for it. So fixing the environment isn't just about being nice, it's about getting rid of that friction.
And that is the ultimate question, isn't it? This journey from defect to difference, it's not over. It asks every single one of us to take a hard look at the structures of our world, our schools, our offices, our social spaces, and ask, who are they really built for and who are they leaving behind?